The Chevrolet L88 427 wasn't just another big engine. It became a legend wrapped in secrecy, controversy, and raw engineering brilliance. Its story is one of corporate politics, clever loopholes, and an ongoing battle with racing authorities that forever altered the course of American motorsport. Beneath its reputation as an unstoppable powerhouse lies a tale of hidden agendas, innovative design, and a relentless push to win at all costs. The roots of the L88 trace back to Chevrolet's Big Block program, which had already made waves in the early 1960s. The 427 displacement was first seen as an evolution of the 409 in the 1963 Impala SS, but even before that, hot rod innovator Mickey Thompson had been experimenting with what would later be called the mystery motor, a prototype version of the Mark II 427. Contrary to popular belief, its first appearance wasn't at Daytona. It was Thompson who debuted the engine during the 1963 NASCAR American Challenge Cup. That so-called mystery motor quickly stirred up trouble. Officially, it was a 427 cubic inch V8 designed to crush the competition in NASCAR. Its hemispherical chambers and radical port design gave it a massive edge over Ford and Chrysler. When Junior Johnson's Chevy, powered by the motor, captured pole position at Daytona, rival teams raised alarms. NASCAR officials, likely tipped off by Ford insiders, tore the engine down after the race. What they found was enough to trigger a scandal. The motor wasn't in line with NASCAR's production-based guidelines. The ruling body immediately banned it, leaving Chevrolet with no choice but to walk away from the program. But Zora Arkus Untold, often called the godfather of the Corvette, wasn't ready to give up. General Motors had imposed a corporate-wide ban on factory racing in 1963, but Untold discovered a loophole. By slipping race engines into dealer catalogs under obscure regular production option or RPO codes, Chevrolet could quietly supply hardcore racers with competition-grade machines. Out of this strategy, the L88 was born. On paper, the L88 looked like a street engine. In reality, it was a thinly disguised race monster. While Chevrolet rated it at 430 horsepower, dyno tests revealed it produced well over 550 horsepower, provided it was fed with 103-octane racing fuel. Its internals were pure competition spec: forged pistons, heavy-duty connecting rods, a forged crankshaft, and aluminum cylinder heads. A massive Holley carburetor and a sky-high 12.5-to-1 compression ratio made it brutally powerful but completely impractical for everyday driving. It had no radio, no heater, and no power steering, all deleted to save weight. For those who managed to get their hands on one, the L88 was as close to a factory-built race car as a buyer could ever hope to drive off a showroom floor. From drag strips to road courses, it cemented its place as one of the most feared engines of its time. But its real genius lay in the way Chevrolet and Untold smuggled it past GM's own restrictions, making the L88 both a technical marvel and a masterclass in corporate defiance. The L88 Corvette engine wasn't designed for casual drivers. It was built with one purpose in mind: to dominate the racetrack. With a staggering 12.5-to-1 compression ratio, it was already far beyond what most production cars could handle. Its bore and stroke dimensions, 4.25 by 3.75 inches, were identical to other Chevrolet big blocks, but the L88's internals and tuning made it something entirely different. The trade-off, however, was fuel. Ordinary pump gas would make the engine knock itself to pieces. To unleash its true potential, it demanded 103-octane racing fuel, the kind you'd only find at a track. Anyone foolish enough to fill it with regular gas would regret it instantly.
Shedding unnecessary bulk was another part of its brilliance. Compared to the heavier ironhead models, the L88 lost about 70 pounds thanks to its use of aluminum cylinder heads, an exotic choice for the time, and a brutally aggressive solid lifter camshaft. Feeding this beast was a gigantic Holley 4-barrel carburetor capable of gulping down 850 cubic feet of air per minute, the largest ever fitted to a GM production engine. This wasn't some boulevard cruiser you took for a Sunday drive. It was a full-blooded, high-compression monster tuned for wide-open throttle. Officially, GM rated the L88 at 430 horsepower, but that number was deliberately misleading. The company intentionally downplayed its output to discourage casual buyers and avoid clashing with GM's corporate ban on factory racing. In truth, dyno tests revealed that the L88 easily exceeded 550 horsepower, making it one of the most powerful engines of its era. But there was always a catch. Without race fuel, the car couldn't run at its peak. It was essentially a factory-built race car disguised under the pretense of being a street option. In 1967, only 20 L88 Corvettes were produced, making them some of the rarest and most sought-after models in history. On the track, however, the results spoke louder than any sales brochure. Racers like Tony DeLorenzo and Jerry Thompson campaigned the L88 with legendary results. Sponsored by Hanley Dawson Chevrolet and Owens Corning, they pushed the Corvette to its limits, proving that this blacked-out machine was more than marketing hype. One of the most significant moments came when an L88 convertible finished second at the SCCA runoffs in Daytona Beach, a result that cemented its reputation as a legitimate track weapon. The L88 was as much a statement of rebellion as it was a racing machine. Engineers knew its life would be short, and when the final L88 rolled off the line in December 1969, they secretly signed the last block as a symbolic gesture of defiance toward GM's conservative upper management. That final engine marked the end of an era defined by big block power and raw performance. Decades later, collectors would pay millions for these rare machines. In 2022, a 1967 L88 Corvette convertible fetched nearly $4 million at auction. But behind the glory was controversy. NASCAR had already banned Chevrolet's earlier mystery motor back in 1963 for being too advanced, and as the L88 rose in prominence, similar restrictions followed. Racing regulators claimed they were protecting competition, but many insiders believed the bans were influenced by rival manufacturers lobbying to keep Chevrolet from dominating. GM itself didn't help matters. Its 1963 corporate directive against factory racing forced engineers like Zora Arktun-Duntov to disguise the L88 as a street option hidden behind obscure regular production option codes. Only the savviest racers knew how to order one, creating an underground network of enthusiasts who understood the secret. The engineering itself was an act of defiance. To handle sustained bursts past 7,000 RPM, Duntov's team relied on forged steel crankshafts, shot-peened connecting rods, and lightweight aluminum heads. The 12.5-to-1 compression ratio was unheard of in production cars, essentially requiring fuel closer to aviation grade than street grade. Even the 850 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor was deliberately restricted for street versions. The racers quickly figured out how to unlock its full capacity with nothing more than a screwdriver. Meanwhile, creature comforts were stripped away. No radio, no heater, no power steering, because every ounce of weight mattered. At idle, the radical camshaft shook the car so violently, it felt like a jackhammer. GM's executives, fearful of lawsuits and bad publicity, tried to bury the L88 by pricing it high, around $1,500, which was nearly 20% of the cost of a Corvette at the time, and instructing dealers to discourage buyers. Officially, only 216 L88 Corvettes were built between 1967 and 1969, 20 in 67, 80 in 68, and 116 in 69. Limited supply, extreme price, and impracticality kept it out of the hands of everyday customers, but for racers, it was the holy grail. Even so, racing politics took their toll. In 1967, Jerry Thompson entered a Daytona endurance race with his L88 Corvette, and the car was so dominant it lapped much of the field. But NASCAR, under pressure from Ford-backed teams, disqualified the car on a technicality, arguing that its aluminum heads weren't production ready. Behind the scenes, Ford spies had been photographing dealer order sheets and supplying evidence that GM was secretly bypassing the racing ban. In retaliation, NASCAR and the FIA introduced rules that effectively outlawed the L88 by mandating smaller carbs and iron heads. Still, the legend grew. Tony DeLorenzo's black L88, sponsored by Owens Corning fiberglass, became one of the most feared cars in SCCA racing. After yet another controversial disqualification, he famously remarked that officials banned the engine only because they couldn't ban the driver. Stories like these turned the L88 into a symbol of outlaw racing, a machine that thrived on the edge of the rulebook. But by 1970, the world had changed. New EPA emission standards, skyrocketing insurance premiums, and the looming oil crisis signaled the death of the big block era.
The L88 was too wild, too expensive, and too politically toxic to survive. In truth, it wasn't simply banned, it was strangled by regulations, fear, and shifting market realities. But for those who drove one, it was unforgettable. The L88 Corvette wasn't just an engine, it was a weapon disguised as a production option. It was feared by regulators, admired by racers, and misunderstood by the public. Even decades later, its ghost lingers in Corvette history, a reminder of a time when engineers built cars not to obey the rules, but to break them.